Hey everybody, how's it going? Christian from Treasure Town here, and today I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about the 10 most iconic American coins that people should have in their collection. So in the past I've done videos about coins to get for your collection that kind of emphasize on having a personal collection, some really kind of cool one-off items to get. Now the focus of this one is specific coins that would be like capstone ones to own from the US, really the flagship key date, highly recognized errors, and just interesting pieces of history that I'd want to pick up if I was going to put together the ultimate US coin collection. These are also coins, though, that are attainable to buy. You'd have to devote a significant amount of money to putting these sets together, but there's no coins here that are like $10,000 or $20,000 in circulated grades. Or maybe there's one of them. But these coins could be attained if you worked really, really hard to save the money to buy these ones. So starting us out and coming in at number 10 is the 1921D Walking Liberty half dollar. Walking Liberty coins were made from 1916 to 1947, and this one was the lowest mintage of those at about $208,000. It's one of the rarest ones in higher grades, but it's actually even rarer in lower grades. So I think that there's one or two dates that beat it out. But the only thing that I'm including additionally on the slides is what you can expect to pay for one of these. And for a VG8, so that's pretty circulated, but there's still some decent detail, but it's very worn still. That's $275 XF40, and I won't go over the condition every time, but that's like, it's seen a little bit of circulation, but the details show very nicely. 2,500, and then mint-state coins are 9,000 to 40,000. So I just think that this one, it's one of the prettiest American coin designs. You can see both sides of the coin look gorgeous. The silver eagles would eventually adopt a similar design to the front of the coin, but the coin isn't super spectacular compared to some of the other on this list, so that's why I figured it would place nicely at number 10. Number 9 is the 1916D Mercury Dime, so this one definitely makes the list again because it's something that's super gorgeous while being a lower mintage coin. 264,000 of these were made, and it was the first year that the design was minted. Again, there was a big shift in our coin designs in 1916, and this came out of it. And for whatever reason, the D Mint did not produce a ton of them. It's kind of like the equivalent of a 1932 D or S quarter, which didn't make the list, but it's just an older key date that people were always looking for. You could find it occasionally in circulation. And it's rare in all grades. The strike was generally pretty good, but it is one of the most counterfeited coins, and that goes for all the coins on this list. So they really do recommend you to use third-party authentication and grading. In terms of the values, they pretty much start around $1,000 and quickly range up, going to about $25,000 before you get into the extremely high grades. Number 8 is our first error coin, but it's one that everybody thinks of when they think of the Buffalo nickel. And for the people on mobile, I'm using a larger photo of the error. Basically, it's a 3-legged Buffalo nickel. It's a result of over-polishing of the dies, meaning that when they struck it, some of it was polished through, so it doesn't really appear. You can see the hoof of that third leg, but the middle part is almost totally evaporated, essentially. And again, you can see that hoof, so that's a big thing. There's also, I think, in 1936D, maybe, there's like a 3.5 leg, but this is really the one to look for, and it's going to be one of the front legs that's missing. A lot of people pulled these out of circulation in 1937 and 38, unlike some of the other errors on this list that were discovered a lot later. And a lot of these are AU 50 to 58, so it could be a good idea to get buy these coins graded, again, as with all of them, if you're going to purchase it, because there may be some wear that you can't see. Buffalo nickels can be challenging to grade, in addition to the possibility of it being faked. You can get an example of one of these for about $400 to $500 in the lower ranges, but the real cost will come in at the higher end, as again, a lot of them saw a little bit of light circulation. The 7th coin on this list is the 1878 CC Morgan dollar, is what I'll be personally talking about, but it really could be any Carson City Morgan dollar. And I think that it's super cool that we have the Morgan dollars. There's one of the most iconic silver older coins from the United States, and they're not super out of reach expense-wise. But the interesting thing is that the Carson City Mint, it's the only mint mark with two letters in it. There was actually a C mint mark in Charlotte, North Carolina long before it, so that's why it's got the double mint marks, unlike something like New Orleans, which had a O mint mark. It wasn't an NO. But there are multiple dates. 1878 originally was one of the rarest to find until years later there were tons of bank vaults, or the government released tons of Morgan dollars and sold them, and bags of these were discovered. Another reason contributing to the CC Morgan dollars rarity, and just for those, if I didn't make it clear, any CC Morgan dollar is going to be a pretty valuable one, is that people didn't really collect by mint mark as much in the beginning, so a lot of these were overlooked. And again, it would be only until the 40s and 50s when tons more of them were released and the CCs weren't as uncommon as previously thought. This one also might be the cheapest on our list because you should be able to get a pretty circulated CC coin for about $100. It'll range up but not get crazy on the more common dates to find for the CC Morgan dollars. You can get some in mint state in a $300 to $500 range. The sixth coin on this list, and this is one that I wasn't sure if it was coming a little bit early, but it's a super well-known and extremely separated double die. This is one of the ones where you don't need a microscope. You can see this one with the naked eye, and that's the 1955 double die. This one is, again, probably the most sharply contrasted doubling that I know of, and people often found these. I think I did some research on them. They were often found in like cigarette boxes, and they'd cost 23 cents, but the vending machines were only taking quarters, so they'd include two of these in them, and that seemed to be a source of a lot of them, and they'd also be uncirculated. And it's probably the most expensive wheat penny, but when I think of an error coin, I think of the 1937 three-legged buffalo, this one, or one other that we're going to be talking about, though the other one's a little more rare and unknown, but this one I think is a super cool one to know about. I always check 1955, and every collector out there who is even a little bit serious or knows a little bit about the hobby is aware that these are out there and hopes that they're one day going to be able to find one. They pretty much start out at a bottom price of $1,000 and can range up quickly in the mint state range to $35K or more. After that, we have our last error, and that's the 1918 over 7 S Standing Liberty Quarter. This one's a little bit more expensive, and I just think that it's one of the ones for experienced collectors that they're really excited about potentially finding. A lot of the time, these are some of the most neat errors out there because they're so clear. It brings to mind at least the 1942 over 1 Mercury Dime, which did not make this list, and maybe it should have. But this one's a super valuable one as well. $2,000 is the bottom. It could go a little bit lower in really worn shape, and it gets expensive fast in the mint state range, going beyond $100,000. But the big thing for this one is that it was noticed late in the 1930s, so it had been out there for years and years before people actually were able to look for this. So it was a situation where you could make some great finds and change because people weren't really looking for it in the beginning. But that's also a reason that that contributed to the scarcity of this coin in really good shape. There's less than 100 mint state survivors today, and there's no gem mint state 65 full head specimens. That's basically when they're, I don't exactly remember the full details of it, but when the head has enough detail where it's considered a full head in addition to a good strike. And beyond that, there was a total mintage of 11 million, so it's a pretty small run overall to be looking for errors from. Number 4 on our list is the 1877 Indian head penny, and this one again is a little bit more attainable for people, but it's generally considered the key date of the Indian head penny series, with the other one being the 1909S as well as the 1908S. This has a mintage of under a million, and generally it's considered to be the second most rare Indian head penny behind the 1909S, but some research has shown that there's been only one reverse die that struck these coins. So basically the metal tool to punch, or not to punch, but to strike each of the coins, it came from one specific die, and that would not have been able to strike about a million coins without some significant damage to the planchets, and that damage just isn't there. So it's thought that the actual number of these struck is far below those estimates, which contributes to its rarity. There's also a lack of coins that were being collected at this time, so that's why it gets so expensive as the condition moves up. It's the case that there weren't people saving these in the numbers that they'd be saving them around the 1909 S Indian head penny. So I figure this one's also an iconic staple of American coin collecting, and the key date warrants a spot on this list. Number 3 is probably one of the ones I'll get the most flack for, especially from people who aren't collecting as much, but I'm going to pretty much loop all pattern coins in, with some specific attention being paid to the $4 Stella coin, which are all considered patterns. I think I could have included the Gobrek dollars here. Some of them were patterns, some of them were circulation strikes, but especially if you consider it a pattern, which I think I do, the 1792 half dime, which was the very first United States coin minted. The Stellas and the half dimes are way out of pretty much any collector's price range, but costing thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not for the, actually in tough grades they're not that expensive, but they're still the most expensive on this list, even including number 2. There's also a lot of attainable patterns, and pretty much these are designs that were only made to show what coins could have been. So today it's all conceptual, but back then they'd strike a certain amount of coins that potentially could be mass produced to show as example pieces or pattern pieces, and then eventually either strike a lot of them or just have them as rare early coins. Number 2 is the 1907 high relief St. Gaudens $20 gold double eagle, and I tried to stick to coins on the list that were potentially collectible if you really were saving your money, so that's why I didn't do the ultra high relief, but the design proved to be super impractical even on the high relief ones. There was a minimum of 3 to 5 strikes on them, which meant that they were super in-depth and detailed. But the problem is you couldn't stack these, and it was not like a flat coin, so it was just challenging to use high quantities of them. There were only 11,250 minted, but they seem to be more common than that mintage because so many of them were saved. So there's an active market going on where it's not just like the average coin that probably had 11,000 minted would see far fewer of these coins being traded in the market. There's been some stories. There was the 1933 $20 double eagle, and there was a whole litigation and lawsuit around somebody who had 10 of them. But basically, these coins are super rare, and the gold coin that comes to mind when I would say an iconic American coin. So I think that this one definitely qualifies for a strong spot in this list. Let's get to number 1. And number 1 is it's my favorite, and that's the 1909 SVDB Lincoln Wheat Penny. I think every collector, when they start collecting, they hear about this one. If soon, or it may have already come out now, I'm going to make a coin collecting 101, and this is for sure going to be one of them that I talk about, but it's probably the most known of the Lincoln Wheat cents, and I'd argue of any of them. But the initials on the reverse, for the brief backstory, I have a full video on it, as well as an counterfeit authentication one. But the Victor David Brenner, I believe his name was, he was the engraver for the coin, and he put his initials here, and a lot of people thought that was a pretty vain move. So they ended up switching, or they took them off only to come back, I think, on the shoulder many years later. But it was only struck for a little bit of time. Most of the 1909 coins did not have the VDB, and there were a few of these being struck at San Francisco in much lower quantities, 484,000 to be exact, than the Philadelphia counterpart. So these became a lot more rare. It was a first year tough mint mark with a cool added little twist to the coin in the VDB. So it became known as the capstone coin to look for in the collection. Now, interestingly, the prices have not moved a ton in the very recent years. You can get a VG8 example for about $600, and even the mint state ones are between $1,000 and $2,500 before you get to the tippy top of grades. So it's a really cool one, and it's one that I hope to own. I think that it would be really fun to just purchase one and hold on to it, because in my opinion, it's the most known and sought after coin for the average, not super advanced collector out there. Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more content, and get in touch with me or contact on treasuretown.yt.com, my website, my Facebook, Treasuretown, my Twitter, at treasuretown_YT, or my Instagram, at treasuretown_YT. Looking forward to seeing you on some of my other videos.